slowly getting plugged into Kansas State sports ahead of the Pop-Tarts Bowl in a couple weeks. Kansas State was in desperate need of some sunshine on Thursday. They got it in some quarterback news.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Happy Friday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Recently, I've started paying attention to Kansas State athletics. They've had certainly a lot going on in both football and basketball. You hear about it all. But on the football side of things, they've had some opt-outs. They've had their offensive coordinator leave, taking the new offensive coordinator job down in Texas A&M. A lot of uncertainty is surrounding this Wildcat team before this Pop-Tart Bowl in just a couple of weeks. But on Thursday, they got a little bit of announcement from one of their more exciting players. That's true freshman quarterback Avery Johnson. Basically announced that he is staying at Kansas State amongst some potential transfer rumors. He's changing his number and effectively will be playing in this Pop-Tarts Bowl against NC State. How significant of news is this for the Wildcats, Kenton?
It's extremely significant because if he didn't play, who else was on their roster?
That is the question. I'm not sure they could field a quarterback if Johnson was not on the field.
They would have had to go Wildcat 24/7 there, and yeesh. I don't think that's the way that you want to attack Tony Gibson's defense. I have a sneaky suspicion that, like, hey, Wildcat, get tight, get physical. It's not the winning recipe. So, this young man coming back to Kansas State, that's going to be a big deal there. And it's kind of the nature of the beast in terms of opt-outs and all that. And we're looking ourselves to see who's going to opt out, who's going to play and whatnot. But either way this goes, regardless of who plays, who doesn't play, this will be a throwback football game. This will be you got to come with your big boy pants on. You got to come with your big boy britches on, or else you're going to get escorted out the club violently type of game on both sides of the ball here. So, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see it. And this quarterback plays into that because he is, at this point in time, as a passer, he's a little bit streaky at least. He's a little bit streaky, at least from how certain Kansas State fans have described him. I haven't watched the film, so I'm not going to lie to you and say I've seen it firsthand to know that. But I am hearing that in terms of running the ball, he is one of them ones, as the kids today say.
I also have not yet tapped into the film on quarterback Avery Johnson, but I have started to do some reading here as we're just a couple weeks out. He's played in 7 games so far this year. He's thrown for 301 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He's ran for 225 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. Now listen to this. I had to triple check this because it seems so absurd on the stat sheet. This season against Texas Tech, freshman backup quarterback Avery Johnson ran for 90 yards and 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns in one game against Texas Tech. Again, hand up. I don't know the specifics of this game. I don't know where Will Howard was, their starting quarterback. Was he hurt? Was this a special sort of package with Johnson on the field? I don't know yet. But for a backup quarterback to run for 5 touchdowns in one game seems absurd. And I think that says a lot about the talent that freshman Avery Johnson possessed. I wanted to give you at least a little bit of insight into the type of player we're talking. This comes from Chris Singletary over at 247 Sports. In talking about Avery Johnson, he says, with good length to his frame, Johnson is a top-flight athlete at the quarterback position. He has good speed and change of direction, which he uses to his advantage when he's on the move and out of the pocket. He's light on his feet and able to maneuver around the pocket with ease as he possesses very good pocket presence and awareness. He is a threat to pull the ball down and run at any moment, which is a constant point of stress for a defense. As a passer, he has improved his mechanics, which will allow him to reach his full potential. With an easy, smooth delivery, the ball comes out with zip and on a line, especially on the short, intermediate routes. So NC State has not exactly dealt with many quarterbacks of this style so far this year. I'd say Kyron Drones probably fits that mold to a certain degree. So the dual threat quarterback is not exactly the unknown for this NC State defense. I'm expecting Tony Gibson to understand the assignment and get to work here. But, as just a true freshman playing in 7 games and being able to put forth this level of production at such a young age, it's very impressive. I'm very excited to start watching the tape, and I'm very excited to see what he looks like against this Tony Gibson defense here at the end of the month. But he's a big deal around Kansas State. I've been listening to some Kansas State podcasts, and there was a lot of uncertainty about if he would possibly follow Colin Klein down to College Station or if he would enter the portal. They were overjoyed to see the announcement come through on Thursday that he was only changing his number and he will be staying in the Wildcat football program. So if there's this much buzz about a freshman quarterback, you certainly got to check out the film to see what he's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the biggest thing here is this is a young man that, at the end of the day, you needed a quarterback, period. You needed somebody who knows the offense, who has played quarterback at the college level. Because if the last time you played, quarterback, there were 15-year-olds who were being forced to play the game because their dad or mom wanted them to play on the field, you probably were going to struggle a little bit. Having a college bowl game against one of the best defenses in the nation as your next snaps at quarterback. So obviously, Avery staying with Kansas State, very big deal there. And I kind of look at this thing and I say, hey, at the end of the day, we have I talk about football being a math equation all the time, right? A quarterback who can run changes the math because that then adds in a blocker into any scheme. When you think of how defenses are set, normally each gap is accounted for and all that good stuff the quarterback is handing off the ball. When the quarterback is a viable threat to keep the ball or, do a multitude of different things in terms of jab step and run counteraction himself, in terms of kind of that little shuffle before power, whatever the case may be, that is the quarterback changing the math. Because, again, defenses don't account for the quarterback in terms of being a ball carrier because the running back adds in the extra gap. So, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see, regardless of who we have available defensively or who we don't, regardless of if we see Peyton Wilson or not, it'll be interesting to see how we keep a hold on Mr. Johnson.
A lot more scouting to come from us in the coming weeks. Still have, I believe it's 3 weeks until this bowl game. A lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. Can't wait to continue to start breaking this down here as the bowl game approaches. Up next, we're going to dive into Fan Friday, addressing some of our top comments of the week. Our first sponsor of the day is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is simply the most fun you can have, winning up to 25 times your money this football and now basketball season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and then place your entry with just a number of taps. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball using the Specials League. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So, for example, you can choose LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. And if you want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players, like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Scholes, you can now find community plays under the promos tab. These are entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each and every week. And of course, PrizePicks also offers the reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So head on over to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows are now covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, let's get into Fan Friday. First one comes from Harrison244. He says, I weirdly watched a lot of Kansas State this season. Avery Johnson is a baller, might be better than Will Howard. Wow, that's quite a statement there. We absolutely can't let him break contain or get in rhythm because he can kill you on play action and QB scrambles. Honestly hoping Cooper Beebe sits out for them too, because he's probably their best player. So even NC State fans, in addition to us, are beginning to take notice of Avery Johnson at quarterback for the Wildcats. Cooper Beebe here is another interesting name to watch for. He's an offensive guard. I think he's up for several awards as he's one of the top offensive linemen in the country. He's certainly a force to be reckoned with. So in addition to keeping track of Avery Johnson, the Wolfpack defensive line is also going to have to fight through plenty of strong-handed Cooper Beebe blocks in order to put some pressure on Johnson in the backfield.
And I haven't really heard much about offensive linemen sitting out bowl games. I mean, that's just kind of not the nature of that position, right? Like you're kind of a sicko if you play in the trenches. Trust me, I know that very well. And so you don't really think about things like, oh, I got to protect my draft stock and whatnot. But Cooper Beebe, he is, by all accounts, everything that he's touted to be. And the reality is, like we've already talked about, Avery Johnson is a threat on the ground. He is. That's absolutely, you talk about break contain and letting them roll out on play action and QB scrambles. Those are all situations where your athleticism is prominently featured, right? And if you're rolling out on the play action, you're cutting off half of the field, but you're making the reads easy, 1, 2, 3, or however many right in front of you. And if 1, 2, 3 are all covered, you tuck that thing down and just keep your rollout going and get upfield and get some yards. So, we've talked about the athlete that Johnson is. Apparently, we're not the only ones noticing. So we'll see the game plan that Gibson and company have for Johnson coming in.
Next one comes from our guy, Andy. He says, Grayson McCall's stats certainly do pop, and he's a gritty player in the mold of BA, but I was hoping we would go after a higher profile P5 quarterback. Feels like we're just going for the clearance section deal. Is he a high enough profile quarterback for all of our incoming wide receivers to have confidence into going into next year? Do we go after another string quarterback or just a mid backup? Well, this is certainly a loaded question here. Grayson McCall obviously has been the main quarterback name that has been linked to NC State so far in terms of transfer portaling. We do have an on-campus visit with McCall this weekend as we did the in-home visit last weekend, so we're certainly going to be waiting for the details surrounding that. But Grayson McCall coming out of the Sun Belt and Coastal Carolina, I think there is something to be said for the level of competition. However, I don't think that always tracks in these sort of things. He does have a big arm. He's a playmaker. He does seem to be very gritty, pretty good leader. I mentioned the level of competition, though. At some points, the Sun Belt has been pretty weak, if we're calling a spade here. There's really only 1 to 2, maybe 3 solid teams that you would see every year at Coastal. So would it be a step up in competition? Yeah, absolutely. ACC football, regardless on how the rest of the country perceives us, it's good football. So this would be a big-time step up for Grayson McCall. However, I want to say this. I think with the level of offensive talent that we have both returning and coming into the program next season, I don't think that you need like a world-beating Heisman candidate quarterback here at NC State. I think Grayson McCall could be very successful, get the ball out on time, make, I'd say, the majority of the throws, and just distribute the ball wherever it needs to be going. I don't think Grayson McCall needs to be Clark Kent in this situation. He doesn't need to be a world-beating superpower at the quarterback position. If he's efficient and he's effective, I think this offense will be just fine.
So my concern is not the conference so much as it is his most recent play in Beck's system. And don't get me wrong, I know y'all have heard me lambaste Tim Beck a billion times on this show. I've gotten more upset at Tim Beck than I think I've ever gotten at anybody on this show. But with that being said, I'm more so concerned about that than the strength of competition, because there was a year, while Grayson was there, by the way, there was a year where the Sun Belt went undefeated against the Big 12. Like that's a real thing that happened there. So this is, they say the game moves slightly faster as you go up levels and all that good stuff. I think that Grayson will be fine with the speed of the game. I'm more so concerned about, and running the offense that they ran originally was very odd. It was this shotgun pistol kind of triple option veer kind of thing going on there. And when he was asked to play an offense that is more modern or more normal amongst today's game, there were struggles there. And granted, we've talked ad nauseum about how quarterbacks generally struggle in year one out of the transfer portal, whatever the case may be. Getting a new coach that's playing a complete opposite style of football from what you're used to, basically the same thing there. So who knows what it would look like in year two, but him coming in the state, I mean, it's kind of that same feeling of who is he going to be in year one? Because I've talked a lot about quarterbacks coming out of the portal. Year one, whatever they are, they're going to be 10 times better in year two. And with Grayson, there is no year two. So, he does seem to be the guy. Let's just see how well he goes out of the portal here.
And last thing here on the clearance section comment, which I do think is very funny. Some of the top quarterback names in the portal extract a very hefty price tag. And so for NC State, I think for some of the reasons I just talked about, I don't think you should go after the biggest names at the quarterback position. I think you should go after maybe a guy like Grayson McCall coming from a G5 school, maybe another P5 school that doesn't have such a massive price tag. So you can allocate some of your other funds to the offensive line, to the wide receiver room, to the linebacking core, the defensive line, whatever it may be. You just need a quarterback that can be very serviceable so you can distribute the wealth everywhere else to bring the entire talent level of the team up higher. Going after another string quarterback or just a mid backup, I fully expect State to be taking two quarterbacks. So whether it is Grayson McCall or it's not Grayson McCall, it'll be potentially McCall and somebody else or just two other quarterbacks. But NC State is going to have to take two of those things this portal season. Like
we've already talked about the concerns and all that, but we're only 2 years removed from the 4 quarterback season.
Right.
It is a fool's errand to say, hey, we're going to trot out Grayson McCall and hope that he stays healthy enough and is good enough, because we've seen quarterbacks bench we've seen quarterbacks. Well, yeah, we have seen quarterbacks get benched because of play. We've seen quarterbacks get hurt. We've seen a lot to say like, hey, if you've got just one guy that you can trust to capably run the offense, you're doing yourself a grave disservice. And so I don't think that that's going to be the case for the Pack. I don't think that Doran and company are going to let this be a situation where it's like, oh, this is our guy and that's it. I'm pretty sure they're going to have to go get another quarterback regardless.
Next one comes from Jay Gardner Pack. Says Noah Rogers coming back to Raleigh would be a huge get. Begs the question, do you want the top recruits signing out of high school or keep up with these guys and snag them after a year or two in the portal? So this is a very interesting question. And of course, Noah Rogers is a name that I haven't explicitly said, but there's been a lot of hushed whispers about, he's the wide receiver, the big name wide receiver up at Ohio State. He's from this area, very good friends with Lex Thomas on the roster. Lots of whispers on if he will enter the portal. Will he not enter the portal? We don't know. Of course, as it stands right now, he's not in the portal. So NC State fans can feel free to monitor that situation as it goes on. But if Noah Rogers were to hit the portal, you have to imagine NC State will make absolutely every effort to bring him home to Raleigh because he has that level of talent. And to answer your question here, Jay Gardner Pack, I think you got to find some level of a balance here, because you do want to keep up your consistent high school recruiting because that part is very important. You want to get guys in the program that you can still develop. But the portal now, that, in my opinion, should be used to address immediate needs. You can go shopping for things that you need next season. Like as soon as you can get something, you can go get something. So I think you have to find a good balance. And I think to a certain extent, Dave Dorn and the Wolfpack have tried to do that. I think last year was a little bit of a miss. So I'm a lot more confident in what they'll be doing this year in the portal. But in my opinion, you have to find a significant balance in order to keep this thing rolling.
I absolutely agree, but I would lean more so towards snag guys out of high school. And like I've already talked about, it is the fact of the matter that, again, more often than not, especially at your pivotal offensive positions that depend on timing and rhythm, you need those guys here for years. You need them. You need them there in that way. And so it's better to get them out of high school and have them building that rhythm and that rapport over years than it is to kind of, come along a little late to where it's like, man, is this year going to be a waste because this quarterback just doesn't quite have it with this receiver? And, they're going to grow together down the line. But right now, they're just coming together out of the portal kind of hosh-posh. That's – you'd much rather have guys out of recruiting from that standpoint. But like you were saying, Grayson, there is a balance. There is a balance. And again, even the teams that you talk about killing it in the portal, right? If you look at Florida State, Jordan Travis was there for years. Johnny Wilson was there for years. Jared Verse was there for years. You're looking at players who were there for years with an S. Players didn't just come in and in year one, everything was hunky-dory. So the reality is this is a situation where, yes, it requires a balance, but I'm a little bit leaning towards the high school side.
And last one here, this is a big one, comes from Jay Clemens. Our 3-year window to win a conference title started unexpectedly this year. 2024 and 2025 is our chance. Maybe we'll be the last conference champion before the ACC disbands. So this one is fast. We've talked up and down about NC State trying to build momentum after a 9-3 season, the whole 9 yards. You got to do well in the transfer portal. You have to continue doing well in the recruiting trail. We talked about just yesterday in leveling up somewhere. You've had 8 wins. You've had 9 wins. Yeah. Now we need to consistently touch 10 wins, maybe get past 10 wins. The college football playoff next year expands to 12 teams. NC State's got to find a way to be competitive for that. And they can do that as early as next year. If you get the pieces you need in the portal and you feel confident about the offense next year, reloading some of the pieces on defense, they can absolutely shoot for the college football playoff as soon as 2024. Listen to NC State's schedule in 2024 and tell me one reason why I shouldn't be this excited about it. Western Carolina in Raleigh. Tennessee, neutral site game in Charlotte. Louisiana Tech in Raleigh. Northern Illinois in Raleigh. At Cal, at Clemson, at Georgia Tech. Duke in Raleigh. Stanford in Raleigh. Syracuse in Raleigh, Wake Forest in Raleigh, and then at Chapel Hill. And I know NC State fans do this every year. We look at the schedule. I only see 2 losses. Next year's going to be our year. I'm telling you right now, NC State needs to put pedal to the metal and go all in 2024. College football playoff for NC State is on the table in 2024. ACC championship for NC State is on the table in 2024. Go in the portal, get what you need, and get to work because your 2024 schedule, as it stands right now, I know other teams are going to go in the portal too. As it stands right now, this looks delicious. I am licking my chops at the 2024 schedule. Let's get it done.
Yeah, I would say, like we talked about during building that level of consistency and all that, but there's another level to be there. And to say that this year was an unexpected start at that window is very true because many people after the Notre Dame game said this is a rebuilding year. Many people after the Duke game were like, the sky's falling. We're not going to be good anymore. And lo and behold, you're looking at a situation where we're now talking about conference championships and all that. So the reality is Dorn has reset the expectations of this program in real time. Now it's time to go reset them again.
Up next, we're going to finish out our Friday episode with a little women's basketball discussion after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. But it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Last couple minutes here on Friday talking about the women's basketball team. Since we spoke about them last, they've now leveled up to number 3 in the country. They remain undefeated at 9-0. They play Liberty on Sunday. They have a couple more non-conference, I believe, before kicking off ACC play against Virginia. Realistically, they're looking at 12-0 here when really nobody believed in them coming into this season.
Rated the 8th best team in the conference. Rated the worst of the 3 triangle teams, despite the women from Duke losing their Miss Everything and Celeste Taylor. And lo and behold, what does old Westmore do? What does old Sinai Rivers do? What does old River Baldwin, Isaiah James, what do? What does little Zoe Brooks do? Lacey Steele, these freshmen coming in doing their thing. I'll tell you what. Wolfpack Nation, this is a team you need to get behind. Sell out every game in Reynolds. Travel with this team. Anytime the road game ain't too far, travel with this team. They deserve all the love and support because Grace and I discussed this off air a little bit. They are the most visible team we have that has a lot of success.
Yes.
That's just the reality. That's not a shot at anybody else. That's not an affront to anybody else. Caitlin Tui is if we talk about greatest college athletes all the time, not NC State athletes, greatest college athletes, period, ever, in terms of accomplishments, in terms of how she did her thing, in terms of the consistency, the level at which she won, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. With all due respect, track and field, particularly long distance running, does not have that same type of visibility that women's basketball does. That's just the reality. Okay? I love our wrestling team. I love Coach Pop. Same deal. Not the same level of visibility. So this team being this good, they need the support, they need the love, and we should give it to them. We ought to give it to them. I know that Reynolds is always going to be sold out anyway. I didn't got to tell y'all to do that. But this team, again, they can do something special. They can be something special. Keep tuning in. Stay locked in with them because they're off to one hellacious start to this season, especially for a team with a small gym that was picked to finish 8th. You know, all I'm saying is the team with the big gym went on a 3-game losing streak at some point in time during this season. Losing 3 in a row, can't relate. But the reality is, again, this is a special team.
Saw what the men's team did in Reynolds just last night. What if we told you there's an even better team that Reynolds is their home gym, they're undefeated, and number 3 in the country? That is the women's basketball team. Continue to roll these teams. Again, I mentioned they got Liberty on Sunday. Should be another blowout in the way that they are just dominating teams. River Baldwin has been a very nice surprise on the offensive end this year, really mixing it up in the paint. She's been a great asset to this team so far. And of course, you got Sinai Rivers, game changer. Isaiah James continuing to grow at still such a young age, game changer. Freshman Zoe Brooks, she is something special. We've mentioned her several times already. She's going to be an absolute weapon. By the time that her time is up here in Raleigh, she is so unbelievably good as just a freshman. This is the team that you have to be paying attention to as ACC play gets closer and closer.
Yeah, it's like watching Kayla Jones with a Gucci belt. I mean, you know, Zoe Brooks, she does it all. She does a little bit of everything and does it all well. And again, that's not a shot to Kayla. That is a mark for she was the prototype of the player that could do it all. If you needed her to have a big night rebound, she could do that. If you needed her to kind of be the facilitator and playmaker, control the pace, she could do that. If you had a night where you needed her to be the knockdown shooter to create some space for Liskane, she could do that. Zoe Brooks is functioning in that same role right now. I'm sure that as time goes on, she'll move into more of the ball handler, facilitator type of role, but she's excelling in the role that she has right now, which is always good to see.
That'll do it for us here on Friday, and that'll do it for us here this week. As always, thank you all so much for the support. Thank you for tuning in with us as this week went on. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments in the comment box. I'll be sure to get to each and every one of those. and tell a friend to tell a friend to tell their neighbor's mailman to hit that subscribe button. We're almost to 1,150 already. We're going to keep this thing rolling. Cannot do it without the support of Wolfpack Nation. So thank you very much for that. We will see you all on Monday. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.